Okay, perfect. Excellent. So thank you, everyone, and welcome. Thank you again for joining us for a second session. Just to introduce myself again, my name is Leighton Spencer. I am a Google Workspace for Education specialist that supports higher education, specifically here in North America. And today, we're going to be diving into license management and how to set up your environment for success. This session is going to be going into how you can kind of manage and assign Google Workspace for Education paid edition licenses. So I'm joined today also by two Google Solutions engineers that work with my team to help support Google Workspace customers, both globally and in North America. They're going to be introducing themselves at the top of their segments today, but I'm sure you all have at least met with them or at least know them by interactions you've had prior to this. But here's kind of a look at what we're going to be covering today. We will dive into the following, starting with a feature breakdown of the paid editions and why it is beneficial to sign licenses. So, the actual features and tools that become available with the paid editions. We'll then run through the licensing options you have in that same section. Then one of our solution engineers will walk us through a demo of the admin console, the Google Cloud Directory Sync or GCDS, and GAM, followed by a highlight from another solutions engineer of the Workspace for Education tool that's currently in beta, and we're going to be reviewing that. And then at the end of this, I'll rejoin you all again to kind of share some of the best resources that we have so you can actually utilize this within your own environments, and then we'll jump into a Q&A. So let's review the features and benefits of Google Workspace paid editions and the license assignment options that you have at your disposal. So here you can see all the additional premium solutions that come with Education Standard, Teaching and Learning Upgrade, and Education Plus. In the blue, we see the advanced security and privacy features that are made available with Standard and Plus. With the proactive security tools like the security dashboard, where you can see what's happening kind of from a 10,000-foot view of your domain with instant reports on file exposure, authentications, and settings. The investigation tool, where you can actually identify and triage, take action on security and privacy issues within the tool itself. The security sandbox, which automatically allow you to scan email attachments to identify potential malware. You can also increase your admin's visibility and settings into security items well before it is urgent. With the use of holistic tools, your admins can also use data regions, so you have the ability to store your covered data in specific geographic regions by using a data region policy. Your geographic location options with this option or with this tool is the United States or Europe. And with data regions, your university or college's data is stored within those specific regions. Without it, it actually utilizes our global network of data centers. This is one where I like to call out that is specifically enabled for licensed users. So that's one of those important pieces to keep in mind with data regions. Is it can only be applied to those who have an Education Plus license assigned to them or an Education Standard license assigned to them. Dynamic groups is another key piece where you can actually create or add and remove members automatically based on membership queries that you use. So this helps keep groups up to date, especially if your organization has many locations or is changing team members frequently. Use dynamic groups as an email or a distribution list, a moderated group or collaborated inbox, or a security group. So a lot of different and unique use cases around dynamic groups as well. And we've seen how universities and colleges have taken advantage of that. Another key piece under the holistic tool set is context-aware access. So this allows you to create access control policies based on attributes such as a user's identity, location, device security status, and IP address. And then on top of all of those, you also get additional insights and analytics that can be surfaced. Gmail logs are one of those key pieces that come along with this. You can use Gmail logs in collaboration with BigQuery to review and access Gmail data for longer than the 30-day reports period. Create log events that can stretch back years to review trends that can advise your admins on security settings or just general usage items as well that you potentially want to take a look at and review over time. So then as we shift towards that green section, we see the premium tools that are added to the teaching and learning upgrade licenses and Plus licenses. So some big components that are available within Plus are public live stream capability. With Plus, you can actually use YouTube to live stream meetings or events to 100,000 individuals at no extra cost. You can also use the ability to use live streaming to perform in-house or cross-collaboration live streams as well to 100,000 individuals, again, at no cost. So a really useful tool that we've seen a lot of universities and college be interested in taking advantage of, especially for things like graduations or sporting events. It is a key piece that you can actually utilize there. Live translated captions is another piece that comes along with Google Meet. You can translate English to or from these specific languages like French, German, Portuguese, and Spanish within your Google Meet captions. You can also translate English into Japanese, Mandarin, or Swedish. So this all happens live within the meeting. And if you have never actually utilized this tool, you can actually test it out today. And there is the closed captioning that you can actually utilize there. Transcriptions are another key piece that come along with Plus and teaching and learning, where you can get automated transcripts of your meeting when it concludes. So if you did miss anything, you can always read along, or it's an easy way for you to keep kind of meeting notes organized. Or if someone else missed the meeting, you can always just send those along as well. Also within that green section, we also see the access to unlimited originality reports, which is our plagiarism detection tool, and actually works in collaboration with Google Assignments that can be used across pretty much any LMS. And then the last piece that we have here is our red section, and these are additional capabilities that specifically come with Education Plus. I think the one that I like to call out here is Cloud Search, which is a powerful tool that allows you to find the information you need to work from anywhere, whether you're using your laptop, a mobile phone, or tablet. And it allows you or your end users to search across your organization's content within Google Workspace or third-party data sources if you have those integrated as well. So a large number of these tools I just ran through need to have Plus licenses or paid edition licenses assigned in order for them to function. These are just some of the benefits that come along with assigning licenses to your end users. And that's just one of the quick call outs that we're making today around how you can actually use those. And some of those sessions that we have later on in this webinar series will go into the specific use cases of security and then also end user pieces as well. But I'm going to pass things now over to Ken, who will be running us through the license assignment options you have for the paid Workspace for Education editions. So Ken, I will pass it over to you. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Leighton. Hello, everyone. I'm Ken Matthews. I'm the solutions engineer on the Workspace for Education team. I specialize in higher education, so I talk to all of you and our other higher education customers around the technical aspects of our product. Excited to be here today to talk through some of the licensing options that you have. As you can see here in this slide, we have about 4 options that are available. 3 of those options, whether they're first-party native tools or third-party tools or tools that we've worked with partners to develop, are all going to be utilizing the Enterprise License Manager API, and we'll get into some specifics about, say, probably top of mind questions you have about that is what are the limits, quota limits on that particular API. To start out with, we have the admin console. You can do a lot within the admin console in terms of licensing specific users, licensing users in bulk. You are not able to license users by groups, but you can license users by OUs. And when we're talking about scalability, I don't know if any of you have seen the can it blend? That's where I got the idea for can it scale. That was the YouTube channel. When we're talking about can it scale, essentially, when we're talking about the admin console, essentially it's going to be dependent on your OU structure. We'll get a little bit into that in the demo. And then we have the Enterprise License Manager API. which is going to underpin Google Cloud Directory Sync, GAM. It's going to leverage that API as well as the licensing, sheet-based licensing tool that Jeff will talk about a little bit later. If you do have Active Directory in your environment and you're provisioning using Google Cloud Directory Sync, we would recommend that you use that to license your users. You already have your source of truth. It's pretty much just search rules depending on groups or OUs that you can create to be able to license those users in your Google environment. We'll dig into that. GAM also has some, especially GAM Advanced, there's some options with the command line to be able to leverage, for instance, if we know we have separate SKUs for staff and student licenses, you can actually do that all in one command with this with a command that's been developed by Ross Scruggs. He added a separate line item there that you're able to use, and we'll look at that a little bit later. And then, of course, we have the license-based tool that Jeff will talk about a little later as well. When we're talking about the Enterprise License Manager API, it's important to know what the limits are. It is 1 query per second, or roughly 10,000 queries per day. That doesn't necessarily apply to the reads. If I need to read licenses across my users, I could pretty much read 1,000 licenses per second. But when it comes to the write operations, that's where we're going to get into those limits. So if I want to add a license, that's going to essentially be 1 query. If I want to take away a license, that's essentially going to be 1 query. So if you extrapolate, based on the limits that I've just mentioned, you could potentially license up to 10,000 users in your environment per day. I know many of you have more than 10,000 users, so it's important to note that that is a limitation of the API, but it's just something to call out when you're developing any solutions around doing that. And with that, I'm going to share my screen. Just let me rearrange some of my windows here, and I'm going to share my screen. And we'll get started on looking at all of the available options within the that I just mentioned. Okay, everybody can see my screen. I believe you can. Okay, so it is important to note here that we want to know where we can find those subscriptions or where we can find those licenses. I'm just going to quickly do a refresh here to make sure that I'm still logged in and the session hasn't timed out, and it has not. So we have this card here on the admin console homepage where you can dig into your subscriptions. You can also go into this side panel over here under billing and dig into the subscription menu here as well. You're going to see a bunch of licenses that you have purchased listed in here. You're probably in your environments not going to see standard with plus licenses. That doesn't typically happen. This is a demo environment. That's why you see it here. But it's important to know that you can see your teaching and learning upgrade, your staff and student licenses for plus, and your standard licenses listed here. You can see whether or not they are active or suspended. You can also see what your available licenses are and how many are assigned within your environments. This is actually links to a separate user list. So if you wanted to click on that link, you'll be taken to the user section under directory here, and it'll pre-filter by all of those licensed users within your environment. You also have the ability, although most of you are probably working with resellers, and we would ask that you do this, continue to do this when you purchase more licenses, but you do have the ability to add subscriptions or add-ons within the admin console. And when we talk about that specifically, we're talking about the teaching and learning upgrade licenses, although we would recommend going through resellers if you are working with them, as well as top of mind, the Google Workspace additional storage. You can click in here and add this directly if you want to. Plus, users actually get a discount from what you see here, what is listed here, which is why we want you to go through your resellers. And Internet 2 members even get a discount as well. So this is just to show you that it is possible to be able to add these subscriptions directly from the admin console if you need. If we want to dig into a specific license, for instance, the teaching and learning here, you have a number of options that are related to this particular option license that you can see a little bit more detail other than just seeing the actual list. You have the ability to see, again, how many licenses you have and how many are assigned. You can assign directly in the user list here. You also have the ability to see the default settings in terms of auto assignment and how many OUs that is applied to directly from here, as well as changing any license settings in this card over here as well. When you're ready to begin auto assigning, you can go into manage license settings here. And this is where you're going to be selecting your OUs and turning on or off automatic license assignment based on your OU structure. When we're talking about best practices around OU structure, you may want to begin organizing your users into separate OUs, whether they're a part of your staff or they are students within your organization. You can have a separate OU for your alumni. More importantly, when it comes to license assignment, you're going to want a separate OU for your suspended users, and I've actually broken it down by staff and students in here as well. That's because if you are going to leverage automatic license assignment, you don't want to license those suspended users as well. So that is important to note. When you're ready to auto assign, it's really simple. You select the OU that you want. You turn on automatic assignment based on that OU or based on that particular license type. You can choose to override or inherit, similar to other settings within the admin console. It is important to note when we're talking about plus staff and student, you can only assign pretty much one or the other based on that particular OU. So in this particular instance, I'm relating to potential staff members, so I probably want to assign staff, and then I would select the student OU to assign my students. There is feature parity between these two licenses, so it's not like one doesn't have what the other does. It really doesn't matter how you assign these licenses at this point. It's just a naming convention at this particular point in time. When you're ready to set those settings, obviously you will hit save based on how you want to make that change. And you can continue on if you want to be able to see how those licenses are applied under the assign license section. It's going to take you to this user list. In this particular instance, I'm selecting all of my users from all of my organizational units. I could choose to select specific organizational units. I could choose to select multiple organizational units if I wanted to focus in on 2 or 3 of them at the same time to see how my license users are assigned. I also have the ability to add filters here by choosing license to sign and choosing whether or not I want to focus on a particular license here. And I can see these are all of my users with the teaching and learning upgrade. I can also take action here. So I can choose to assign licenses by selecting all of those users or individual users. It's going to unlock this assign license, so I can bulk assign just directly from here up to 50 at a time. I could also remove licenses if I wanted to from this section. So for instance, if I wanted to remove teaching and learning licenses from these particular users, I could, but of course I'm going to get an error message. The reason is because I have an automatic assignment at the OU level. So I have to go back into those license manager settings. I have to turn off that auto assignment before I'm able to remove these licenses from those users. The other option that I have available to me is the ability to, let me just take that off, the ability to bulk update users. I can download a CSV template. I can download user information into that CSV template. Once I've made the edits, which we'll see in a second, I can attach that CSV file and upload my users using this method up to 200 at a time. So not a particularly scalable option, but something that could be leveraged if you needed to license your users fast using this particular method. How the CSV file looks is essentially like this. You're going to have a list of all of your users, and there are going to be 2 columns that you're going to be looking at here. The ability to read which licenses those users have. It's important to note that if you want to update a license for that particular user that already has a similar license, like for instance a plus staff and a plus license, you would have to remove that license in the admin console before you can actually update that with this particular SKU ID. All of these are the IDs of the SKUs that are related to the particular edition that we have available. So this one, I believe 0009 is the plus staff, and 008 is the just the regular plus license. But you could put that in here, upload that CSV into the admin console, and you'd be off to all of your users would be licensed. Next, we're going to dig into Google Cloud Directory Sync. I'm not going to talk about essentially how you can configure Google Cloud Directory Sync. I'm assuming that for the purposes of this demo, you have this already set up in your environments. You're syncing users based off of user search rules, group search rules. You're syncing groups. You're syncing contacts. It is important to note that if you want to start syncing licenses, you do have to check this under General Settings, and that'll unlock this particular card here. This is if you have an active directory environment, obviously, and you want to take your source of truth from that environment and start provisioning users into Google. When you click on the license card, you have two options here: the ability to create your rules and the ability to look at all of the various SKUs that are available within our product. And you can choose to remove things that are not related to education if you want to. You can choose to go back to the defaults to list all of those particular SKUs. This is what you're going to be referencing when you create these rules in the license rules section. Some sample queries that you can run with LDAP. If I wanted to pull all various users and object category users who are members of the faculty group, the staff group, and the teachers group, I could create this query, and then I can assign all of my staff licenses plus staff licenses to those users based on this query. I can do the same for members of a student group if I have that particular group in my environment. I could also leverage this particular attribute if I have custom attributes within my environment. In this example, I'm saying I have some lifecycle management custom attributes in AD, such as lifecycle staff, lifecycle faculty, and all users that have that particular attribute would be the ones that I want to target in terms of the syncing of licenses to those same users within the Google environment. Similarly, I have one for students over here. Once I'm ready to set up those rules, we're going to be targeting a specific email address attribute. Most of the times, if you have Exchange in your environment, it will be mail, the mail attribute. I'm using user principal name here because that's the closest to the email attribute. And I do not have Exchange in this test environment, but that's just something to call out. And you're going to create that rule. In this instance, I'm going to edit an existing rule, but you have the ability to put in the query here, assign that license to Google domain users, and then you can choose those licenses based on the list that we saw under SKU Management tab. You also, once you've made that selection, you have the ability to check or uncheck the remove the license from the domain users that do not match this rule. That may be important to uncheck so that you don't inadvertently unlicense, say, maybe admins who need that license. Or if you're doing some manual license assignment on the Google side, you more than likely want to keep this unchecked so that you don't inadvertently remove licenses when you shouldn't. You can test that to see if it's running correctly. You'll see some initial results here. And you can go even further by simulating the sync, as many of you probably know if you've worked with this. You can simulate that sync before actually making those changes in your environment to ensure that all the changes that will be happening are correct and that there are no errors. And for license assignment, you're going to see it all the way down at the bottom. You're going to see all the users that are going to get all of these various licenses that I created based on the LDAP queries and search functionality or search rules that I created. Next, we're going to dig into GAM. And I'm not going to get too deep into the GAM commands, but I just want to show you how easy it is to begin to use this tool. It is important to note that GAM is not a supported project. It is a product. It is considered a third-party tool, but a lot of admins use this tool. It has separate licensing agreements. So it's important to note that you can leverage this tool to be able to license your users at scale. The syntax of the GAM is going to be relatively simple, where you can essentially, and this is GAM Advanced. I'm just going to confirm the version here. The version here is 6.29.21. There is a version. We're going to have a command at the end of this that it's called one SKU. That's a metric that you can utilize, and you'll see here in a little bit later, but it requires 630. I'm not going to be able to run the command, but at least to know that you need to update to 630.01 to be able to leverage that command a little bit later. Generally, when you're running these commands, you go GAM either user, you can reference a group if you want to, or you can even reference an OU. In this particular instance, I'm just going to reference this particular user, which is a freshman student at mydomain.com. And I can either choose to add or delete a license, or I can choose to sync a license. So this is really important when we're talking about groups. If I want to sync based off of group membership, for instance, it will read the existing members, whether they have a license or not, and only sync with a license or add licenses to those members who don't. That's great in terms of running calls using the Enterprise License Manager API. Once I've decided in this particular instance if I want to license that user, I just type in license, and then I put in the SKU here, 10008, and I press enter, and that will license that user. Because I'm running Cloud Shell, it may take a little bit more time than, say, if you're running it on a separate Linux machine or a Windows box. You'll actually be able to go into the user list over here and be able to see that that user, once it's updated, that user actually has a license. I just want to make sure that the command is actually run. Yes, it has. So you can go back over here and you can confirm that in the admin console under the license tab here. Probably have to refresh unless, did I choose the right one? Yes. So that should pop up. Maybe I didn't choose the right user, but it should pop up shortly for once the propagation delay happens. Next, you're also able to create groups directly in GAM. It looks like it's actually still running. So let's just close out of that. It was still running, taking some time, and that's probably because it's a Cloud Shell instance. It takes a little bit of time. I might need to, why don't I just refresh this real quick? Reload this instance and let that provision, that Cloud Machine provision again. Next, you'll be able to update via group membership as well. So if I wanted to create a particular group, GAM create group, and I'm going to call this group Google Workspace for Education at mydomain.com. And I create that group, and the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to start adding members. I want to start adding members that already have a license, as well as license other members who are going to be a part of that group that may not necessarily have that license through the sync command. Once that group is created, I can then GAM update the group, and I'm going to reference that group here. And I'm going to add members with the license that I specify, and in that case, it's going to be the Workspace for Education Plus license. I'll make sure I have that SKU correct. And it's going to go, I did not write in the correct SKU. I have another 0 here. And it's going to go through and look at all of the various members who have a license. As you can see here, it's relatively fast. And it's going to add those members with that license into the group. And at that point, I can use a sync command to sync licenses to members of that group. So if I wanted to go GAM group, there is a little metric here that I can add, or a parameter that I can add called NS. This is essentially telling GAM is telling the API to ignore all suspended users. I'm going to reference that group again. And then I'm going to sync licenses referencing that particular SKU. 1, 2, 3. And let that run. It's going to go through all those members, and it's going to see that of the 51 members, all 51 licenses are currently assigned. So nobody new in the group needs an assignment, a license assignment. It's not going to run that particular write operation for those users. Also, I have the ability to take this command and add a separate SKU with that one SKU license metric or parameter. Essentially, I can take GAM, I want to ignore all my suspended users. I got this particular user, this group right here. I can also add recursive N as a command, and essentially what this will do, if you have nested groups within a group, it'll essentially pull the membership of those nested groups as well. So that's important, as many higher education institutions are doing that exact scenario. I can then sync the licenses here. I'm going to be referencing multiple licenses, so I'm just going to put that here, and I'm going to hit this right here, and then I'm going to put in the additional SKU, which is the staff SKU, right there. So I'm referencing 2 SKUs, and then I'm going to put in that 1 SKU parameter. And essentially what this will tell GAM is if license, it'll take both of those SKUs, And if users don't have one SKU, it'll give them the other SKU. This way, you can run one command across multiple SKUs without having to run two separate GAM commands dependent upon that SKU. You can also, if you want to, you can preview this command if you don't want to actually execute the command beforehand. And you can also put in something called action CSV. And that will actually output a CSV of what will essentially happen. You can do that both with preview, and you can do that with the execution without preview. I'm going to actually run this here, and you're going to see that it's going to error out, and that is because it's dependent upon the version. My version needs to be updated, but you can see here that this is an invalid choice because the one SKU option hasn't been added to this particular version. That is essentially, in a nutshell, all the various ways that you can. Obviously, there's going to be much more in-depth ways that you can leverage this tool as well as GCDS, but that's various ways that you can go through to license your users. And now I'm going to kick it over to Jeff, and he'll be able to walk through the sheets-based licensing tool with you as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ken. And hello, everyone. Good to see you all. I'm Jeff. I'm also a solutions engineer with Google for Education. So I am going to share with you a relatively new tool. Basically, this is, let me share this tab first. So one of the, we've heard some feedback around licensing, right? As you've seen, you have a number of options. And they don't always work for everyone. Some folks are not using GCDS. Some folks are not using GAM. We know that the admin console has limitations as to how it licenses users. And so there is a partner of ours actually built a tool. We work closely with them. This is their tool, but it's a sheets-based licensing tool. It uses AppScript, and it's available for no charge. So you can actually go to this page, and we'll make this link available, and download, essentially make a copy of the sheet. And the sheet just runs like any other Google sheet that uses AppScript. So it's going to sit within your account, or whatever account that you designate, that you make the copy in. And it will run in Google Sheets. Everything happens within your environment. And it uses the same APIs that are being used for things like GAM and GCDS. So it is subject to the same limitations that Ken mentioned earlier, just to note. But it's relatively easy to use. We wanted someone to develop this because, again, we knew that there were folks that weren't using GCDS or weren't using GAM. And we wanted to create kind of a UI-based tool, something that was relatively easy to use, something that was flexible, something that could cover a number of different use cases. So when you go to this page, you'll be able to click this button here, Copy License Management Tool. That's going to open up and make a copy of the Google Sheet. Also on this page, and you'll have the link to this as well, we've got a whole getting started guide that'll walk you through exactly how to use the tool. We've got some instructions on the page as well. There are some FAQs here that are hopefully helpful. And then there's also links to help. So we've got folks that are monitoring this. If you need any help, if you run into any issues, you're welcome to use these links. If you have feature requests, please do let them know. I will say that this tool is currently in beta. So we are, testing it with some schools. So a couple things I will say. One, it's very possible this tool will have bugs. So please do let us know if you encounter those bugs. Two, we'd recommend either using this tool first on, let's say, a test or demo environment, if you have one, rather than your production environment, or perhaps using it in production, but doing it with a small set of users, perhaps your admins or your staff or just yourself, just to kind of test things out and make sure it's working. There's also a way to simulate a sync without actually running it, and I'll show you that. So the tool has just a couple of tabs. When you make a copy, there's going to be a couple things that you need to do first, and the instructions will lay this out. But we need you to tell us how many licenses you have. We wish this is something that we could get automatically. It's not, unfortunately, so we're going to make you do a little bit of work, hopefully not too onerous. You can find this pretty easily by going into your admin console. Sorry about that. You can go into your admin console and look at your subscriptions, and it will tell you how many licenses you've purchased if you don't know offhand. But we need you to tell us that, and then from there, we're actually able to, via API, see how many licenses you've assigned to users, and then we can do the math and figure out how many are available. But we need this first step. This is on a particular demo account where we've got a whole bunch of different licenses, which is why you see multiple licenses here. For most of you, you'll probably just have, let's say, plus and plus staff. Once you've done this initial step, you'll be able to set up the sync. This menu at the top here, sync licenses, will first have a setup in it when you first start the sheet. You'll actually run that setup. It's going to authorize you using the tool. It's going to run an initial scan, and it's going to read and figure out who's got assigned licenses. And it's going to pull that into this column here. It will also tell you who's got assigned licenses in this assigned tab here at the bottom. So it'll pull in all of these users. It'll tell you the name, the SKU name, etc. Then where the magic happens is this tab. So this tab allows you to set up your actual syncs, and there's a few options that you have available to you. The first thing is you can sync by either group or OU, so very similar to GCDS and to GAM. So for example, I've got a bunch of OUs here, undergrad, grad, faculty, alumni, and then I've got two groups. I've got my admins at school EDU and my temp access. You can use dynamic groups. And so if you have any dynamic groups set up, they will work here just fine. It can be a great way to manage licensing. You also have the ability to exclude groups, and you can do this whether you're using OUs or groups initially. So in this example, I'll talk about this in a second, I've got an exclusion group with my alumni. Then you get to pick the license. So you will have a choice of whatever licenses you told us you have in that first step, you will see in this dropdown. So you won't see all of these, but you'll likely see plus and plus staff for most of you. And then you can choose which one you want to assign to whom. Just a reminder, both these licenses have exactly the same features. And so you are welcome to assign whichever license to whichever user. You don't have to assign staff licenses to just your staff. You don't have to assign the plus licenses just to students. Whatever is easiest for you is totally fine. And so you'll also be able to pick fundamentals. And we gave this option in case you want to make sure that a particular group does not have licenses assigned. So for example, let's say most of your alumni, they don't need licenses. They don't need the features. And you want to make sure they're not taking up those licenses that you want for other users. So you can set this as fundamentals. But of course, we all have VIP alums, right? Maybe they need a little extra special love. And so for these users, we are going to exclude them so that they can have the licenses. So just an example of how you could use exclusion groups. Then in terms of this, the action type, we have three options: sync, add, or remove. So you can do an add, it'll just add licenses to folks who don't have it. You can do a remove, it will remove that particular license from those users, or you can do a sync, it'll add and remove as it sees fit. There's also two different types of sync type with this. So you can do a manual sync, and manual is really just a one-off sync. When you set this as manual and you run the sync, it's just going to do it once. It'll license all of those users or whatever you tell it to do, and it'll stop. The automated sync will repeat over and over and over ad infinitum. So it will run the sync. Once it's completed, it will start the sync all over again. So the cool thing about this is once you've got everything running the way that you want, you can kind of just set it and forget it. You can set this up to be automated. You can run it. You can even close this sheet out, and it should keep running. A couple of other things. We wanted to give you flexibility. So you can remove licenses specifically from inactive users. So for example, I put 180 days here for all of these. So basically I'm saying, if you find anybody who has not logged in to their Workspace account in 180 days, please remove their license. We don't want them to be taking up that license. It's going to skip suspended users automatically, but if for any reason you want to actually provision licenses to suspended users, you can click this check mark. Once you've got all of this set up, you can go to the sync licenses menu, and you can do a couple things. You can run the license sync. It'll start up that sync. You can cancel a license sync if it's running, and you can simulate a license sync. And I really love this because, again, especially with this tool in beta, I think it's helpful to see what the tool is going to do before it actually does it. So when you simulate a sync, what will happen is it will simulate running the sync, and then in this tab, sync simulation, it will show you exactly what it would have done. So it won't actually add or remove the licenses, but it will give you a log of what it would have done. And you can just make sure that it's doing exactly what you want it to do before you actually run the sync for real. You can also refresh your license list or just reset. So pretty cool tool. Again, it's available at no charge. It's in beta. We would love to get some feedback. If you're curious in using it, please do. Please try it in your demo accounts. Please try the simulations. See if it works for you. Let us know if you encounter any bugs. And if there's anything that you want to see in this tool going forward in terms of features or changes, please do let us know using the link on the website. The last thing I'll just say here is you will get logs of everything that the tool does, even when you run the actual sync. So you'll get a log of each basically run of the tool, and then you'll also get assignment logs. So in here you'll see how the tool assigned licenses and to whom. So you'll get logs of everything that's happening, so you know exactly what happened and when. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Leighton.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jeff. And let me share my screen. And as that pulls up, the next section that we're going to be covering is a lot of these resources. So obviously we know we went through just a ton of information, and I appreciate both you, Ken and Jeff, for jumping on and sharing all of that. But let's take a look at the resources that you all will have that you can take away from this session so you can actually run these within your own environments. So here we have, some extremely helpful links that explain how licensing works and the licensing managers that are available. We have also linked in here the licensing guide that details a lot of the items that Ken touched on today. So it kind of details, the different options that you have and how you can actually utilize those within your environment. In addition to that, we have the admin support public resource page, which is actually a great place to get started. And then also a great place if you do need additional trainings, or you have just you're just curious about how you can have a deeper understanding of your workspace environment. So some great tools that are also available completely free of charge as well within there. And then lastly, if you are interested in the tool that Jeff just showcased, we have some more information of how that Google Workspace for Education licensing tool, which is in beta, works, and then some of the things that you should also consider when utilizing it. So I think it highlights a lot of the things that Jeff was talking about, where maybe start off with a smaller group of users if you are going to be utilizing this in your primary domain, or testing it within your test domains. But I think with that pretty much wraps up our session today. So really, really are grateful for you all, attending today's session and coming through again. We hope to see you all, obviously, at our next session, which is on Tuesday, April 4th, for our storage management discussion, which I know is probably top of mind for a lot of you, if not all of you. But just wanted to thank you again for today for attending. And we're going to jump into the Q&A section now. So we can go ahead and pause that recording, Ariel, and then, we can